And hi, everybody, and welcome to Around the Ancient Eight, our weekly look at Ivy League basketball. I'm Dan Loney. Today, we're previewing the weekend contest for the women's games, and joining us to discuss it is Calvin Bohn, who is the Ivy League digital network correspondent for the Yale Bulldogs. And Calvin joins us from New Haven, Connecticut. Calvin, thanks for a few minutes.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Dan.
So Yale right now sits in a five-way tie for first place. I would imagine that Coach Chris Gobrecht feels pretty good about her team's position right now.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. The thing to remember is that in this Ivy League women's basketball conference, Princeton has been dominant forever. For these girls who are playing now, there's never been an era when Princeton wasn't by far the best team in the Ivy League. And this year, for the first time, with Naveen Rashid and two other starters graduated, Princeton's really become vulnerable for the first time in a while. And with this five-way tie we see at the top, it's just a fascinating year. Now, of course, it's still early in the season, and we don't really know the true talent of these teams, but sitting at 3-1 is absolutely incredible. And one huge thing for Yale that's happened so far is that the team's only really replacing two seniors in Megan Vasquez and Ali Messimer. Huge losses for the team, but given that there's only those two roles to fill in, the team's been able to step up, and especially with the contributions of freshmen like Lena Munzer, this team has really stepped up and put itself in a position to compete for the Ivy League title this year.
And the Bulldogs have quite a player in the backcourt in Sarah Halajian. Tell us what makes her such an important part of this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah Halajian has been a boon to this program since she came in as a freshman and took Ivy League Rookie of the Year honors. Last year she was All-Ivy. This year I'm sure she will be as well. Just an amazing player. For those who haven't had the chance to see her, she combines pretty dominant three-point shooting. Basically, whenever left open, she will make the shot, with dynamic drives to the rim and spectacular body control that makes her something of an and-one machine. And especially late in games or against teams that are making it a little tough for the Bulldogs, the ability that they have to give Sarah Halajian the ball and tell her to just make some offense go is amazingly valuable. On top of that, as you sort of mentioned, her leadership is huge for the entire team whenever it carries over to her actual ability to play, but also the effect she has on the court. She simply calms everybody down. Any trapping situation, give Halajian the ball, let her get it across half court. Just a hugely valuable player for this team.
And what about the weekend games? Of course, we've got 5 teams tied with 1 league loss right now. It means that there are a lot of important games.
Yeah, absolutely. So this weekend, the Bulldogs will play Dartmouth and Harvard, obviously, the matchup that everyone waits for. It should be interesting, especially, as I've mentioned, with so many freshmen seeing time this year. This will be their first time against Harvard. And especially Temi Fag-Benley, a girl who absolutely crushed Yale last year. She actually plays for the British national team when she's not at Harvard. Will be huge to see what we can do against her, and also how the young players step up. It will also be interesting to see in the rest of the Ivy League what Cornell does in their games against Penn and Princeton. Cornell, not a team that was getting a ton of hype coming into the year, but they're right at the top of the standings with the 4 teams that were expected to be here. And it'll be exciting to see if they can keep up with it.
Calvin, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Calvin Bohn joining us from New Haven, Connecticut. Don't forget, there's a complete slate of games on the Ivy League Digital Network this coming weekend. And remember to check back on Monday and Tuesday for complete men's and women's highlights from this weekend's contest. Thanks for joining us on Around the Ancient Eight. I'm Dan Loney.